Good afternoon, LinkedIn. Welcome to another episode of Let's Build Workspaces with Danielle. How you doing, Danielle?
I'm great. How are you?
I am doing wonderful on location today at a client site. So forgive the grainy video and, uh, average microphone here, but the show must go on. So we're here today, actually, segue, communication. The things I was just mentioning, hard sometimes, all the time in my experience, and especially hard when we would love for them to be doing the thing in HubSpot, and for some reason they're not. So often it comes
Yeah.
down to communication. So when you brought this up today, this is already on my mind. Is like we're starting some new stuff, and we're creating Slacks and got some new HubSpot stuff to build out, and even AI tools now. Like, how do we collaborate everywhere? So it's been on my mind, and I'm interested to hear your thoughts and why it's on yours.
Yeah. So it's on my mind because one of my clients is using HubSpot and Salesforce, and their sales team is primarily working out of Salesforce, as is common with many integrations. And so we just reworked their lead scoring, and we're trying to figure out, now that we've got more context for this activity, how do we share it with the reps in a way that's not always an opportunity? Like, we don't want it to just push through when it's an opportunity. So how do we share this information about, your existing customer did something that was significant or interesting without just like pushing an opportunity through? And so we are kind of evaluating, we're just getting started with this phase of the project, but we're trying to evaluate, like, is it an email each time something happens? Is it a daily digest? I don't know if they have Slack in the mix. Is it like tasks? Is it activity records in Salesforce? And those are all push notifications. And so then how else can we kind of tie that together in pull methods? So like if they go into a Salesforce record and they don't have a HubSpot seat because they got switched over to seat pricing, how much can they see? Or how can we structure their view in Salesforce to make sure that any significant activity is obvious in Salesforce when they need to take action on that leader contact?
Yeah, I think you mentioned some good points. Like, so often, can they see it? Should be the question that we're asking, and we
Yeah,
often like assume that they are, and they're
baseline.
just not doing it. And it's like most people want to do good, but sometimes it's just not in front of them, or they missed the training that day, or whatever. So, like when you find gaps, just asking that question first. It's almost like, is it plugged in from an IT perspective?
And
Like,
plug it and
do
plug it
you
back in.
know this is a thing?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you don't know where people's kind of home base is until you talk to them. And it's probably different for every member of your team, or at least you've got a couple different places. Like when you open your laptop in the morning and you're ready to get started on working, what are like the first three things that you do? For me, it's email, Slack, and then some project management tools that I have across different clients just to see if anything has popped up overnight. And I get so many different types of notifications in those places. Usually, just for the line of work that I'm in, they're not directed for me in email and Slack. But anything that is like top priority. I want to go see what it is and talk to people and make sure I didn't miss anything. So I don't know if that's how other people start their day. Like, how do you start your day?
A Chrome browser that opens up to HubSpot and Gmail, and HubSpot just because I can. I don't necessarily go and do anything in there, but I always know I'll need it at some point. Gmail, I'm checking that. Uh, I often like order my icons on the bottom and in the order that I want to open them up. Slack is another big one, but that's, I think, so much comes down to that process, and all the places I've been, like email, right? Always the first thing. And then it's so that kind of rules the process for a lot of people, and they don't open the other things until the email
That's
itself
done.
either takes them automatically in there for clicking like a HubSpot, button to go see the contact, or now I have to do something to serve this email. I'm going to go check for information here or there. And that's where in that moment, there's often a lot of opportunity where if you're seeing this information in HubSpot, for example, instead of your email, now you can action on it there. The communication stays there. Like, what kind of things are you talking about with the client as you start on this journey, with them?
Well, operationally, the things that we want to push through, the things that we want to call attention to are the contact activities. So like the contact filled out a form, the contact registered for a webinar, the contact will be at this event we're going to, and we just, imported that list to the event in HubSpot and pushed them into a holding campaign. So when we want to deliver that information, especially if you're pushing in a list, which I have a lot of feelings about best practices in, but when you do that, it could trigger, hundreds of alerts, depending on how you have it set up. And so we need to make sure that we're delivering the message in a way that is worth reading and easy to get through and makes sense, gives just enough context, but isn't like overwhelming with all of the information. And then also, we probably need a push notification. Like, we can't just load it into HubSpot and Salesforce and hope they go see it somewhere. I know that their Salesforce admin built out a dashboard or a view that's like campaign activity. And the last I talked to him about it, he was like, I don't think anyone knows this exists or even looks at it. Like, I've told them, we've brought it up in training, I've shown them in screen shares. I don't think anyone uses this. So we know that we need push notifications somewhere, but we have to make sure that we like throttle it and keep it aligned to the things we want them to take action on. And to your point, it's like, how do we get them into the platform where they can take action? In their case, it'll mostly be Salesforce, but some of that information will come from HubSpot. So we'll definitely have to go through some rounds of testing to see what lands best and what is like the right amount of information for each team.
Yeah. Oh man, you made some great points there, because this balance, trying to achieve this balance of notification overwhelm specifically. Because I've had times where they want really badly to be notified. And
Right.
they help you
They
set
want to
up the
know.
process. They help you set up the process. They do the work to say like, okay, when I get this notification, I will do this thing. I'm in. And then the way that it comes is in the noise bucket. So it's in this thing that is hundreds. Like, they see hundreds, it hits every day. They're never checking it, right? Whether it's an email notification from HubSpot or the push notifications. And it's hard, right? So what I've watched people do, and maybe sometimes myself, is you start to manufacture more forms of communication, like tasks, like things that actually have to be maintained. And then instead of actually solving the problem, now you just have a bunch of tasks that you don't address and they just sit there. So what have you found as a way to like achieve that balance?
I don't know that I don't have a formula. Like, it really depends on the client and the team and how they function. I had one client that actually got rid of Slack. And so we couldn't quite figure out how to pipe information from HubSpot into their sales team. Like, how do we make sure they see it? So we started using push notifications in the platform, but I was like, truly, who pays attention to those? Like, it tells me my download is done, and that's the only reason I'm going to go in there. Like, if your function is to be on chat, you're going to be in chat. If your function is to like plow through leads, you're going to plow through leads. You're not going to go look for push notifications. So I think we still have those running. There, in a previous iteration of that same sort of communication strategy, we had Slack notifications and we had text messages. They had a texting platform integrated with HubSpot primarily for communication externally, but their sales manager was like, time is of the essence. Get on this, and like, we're going to send it to your phone to make sure you see it. And then he also had it sending to him. And I was like, dude, you have to be going crazy with this. Like, this is way too much. But I think when you go to that extreme, it's like you have so much noise coming from every direction that it all just gets lost. Like, nothing is meaningful then. And I know a lot of clients and a lot of companies I've worked for will have like a form fill channel in their Slack if they have Slack connected. So for every single form fill, there's just like this running constant feed of form registrations that are getting dumped into a channel. So it's nice, especially in startups, because the CEO can just go through and be like, wow, I can scroll. Like, so many people registered for our webinar today. And personally, I need that boost sometimes, and they need to know that I'm doing things. So it serves a purpose. Like, you can't get rid of it, even though it's just a noise bucket, like you said. Like, it's not actually that helpful. But you, even with that, if you need to operationalize that and make it useful, you can start to tag the owner, so that all of those notifications still live in one place, but the owner is getting a personalized ping on that. But then you have people like my husband who have 305,000 unread emails and messages. I'm like, I don't understand how you function.
Yeah, I'm about to celebrate the 6,000 milestone in my conveying your message email inbox. Thank you, all the AI bots, for helping me achieve that. No, I think that last use case you mentioned, super insightful in terms of like the purpose is visibility in a lot of cases, right? And the power of a leader being able to come in and answer that question instead of asking you, well, how many do we have for the webinar? 2 hours later, hey, have we gotten anybody else for the webinar? Right, over and over. Now they just can go to the Slack channel like over and over. That's huge. But then when you try to get anybody to do anything from that information and kind of switch it from visibility only to action, that's where there's challenges. So I think like I always come back to process and purpose. And generally, when nobody has strong opinions, which they often don't, except for just make it better, like make the bad man stop. It's like, what are we using HubSpot for? Question number one. And that's earlier this year, I discovered I had to change the way I talked about HubSpot. Instead of just CRM, which so many people say, like sales only data goes into CRM. I started talking about it as communication and relationship management for this purpose. It's like, we should get out of the game of figuring out, should it go in HubSpot, right? Like if we just put all the communication in there, so many things, like the gray areas go away, the gaps are just gone, and we don't have to solve for them anymore. We don't have to build bridges or tasks or anything because it's just there. And I was just on the admin hug, and it was a service hub feedback day, and somebody came on and talked about how they're excited about like their vendor management is happening in HubSpot. And the way it was talked about, it was like from a supply chain perspective. And those are the kinds of things when we don't understand the process or we don't understand what HubSpot can do. It's like your team is used to doing all that stuff via email, right? So if they don't see why, like, and the sales team doesn't raise their hand, and nobody's raising their hand and say, hey, instead of sending me this lead time update, that should be in our CRM so I can just be notified, and then I can tell the customer very easily, right? It still relates to the deal or the close of the deal, right? These account managers, all these people need to be communicating, and it's so fun for me, at least, to like take them through the process and really help them understand how often they are needing to communicate things to customers that are not in any system other than their emails.
Right. Well, and that change management can be really difficult too when you're going from like push notifications to pull notifications, basically, is how I'm thinking about this. So you're taking it from when you need something, you have to ask for it, or you have to have something alert you that something has changed. And there's obviously a time and place for that, especially when things are time sensitive. You know, having a push notification in a channel that's meaningful and gets in front of the right person without adding to the noise is like this magical world that hopefully we can arrive at someday. But when you move away from that like fire hose of information just getting shot at every single person in the company and pull that back into the central system that is usually HubSpot in our world, then people have to go find that information, and they're not used to finding that. So there's kind of this change management that has to happen where it's like, okay, we're still going to send you push notifications, but those push notifications are going to link to the place where you'll see everything, whether it's everything related to that deal, everything related to that service ticket, or in some cases for my clients, I've built like a sales dashboard. And those that have enterprise, I go into each user and set it as their homepage. So when they log into HubSpot, they see it's not even a dashboard, it's just a filtered contact view. And I set the columns up to sort by either last session or last conversion date. So then they get like the most recent things that happened at the top, and that's probably related to the push notification that they got in whatever channel they're seeing it. And then they get to see everything else, and you can even filter it to that person. So it's like, here's all of the activity for your assigned contact, and that's the first thing that you're going to see. It depends what they're logging in for, but at least if you can bridge that gap between here's something that is so hyper relevant and specific to you that will probably change your conversation with a lead or a contact. Maybe it's related to a deal. Maybe it's a new lead. Like, this is the basis of your job, is to go talk to this person and get it done. And then it's going to lead them into, expanding on that and in ways that are relevant and very clear, what could be done as a next step. So it's kind of like guiding them to, the best way to work through this fire hose of information.
Yeah, I love that. So I think what you're describing there, this context switching is so like hard to manage in these roles, especially customer facing roles. And that's one of the reasons, like, there's some safety, like, in sitting in your inbox and just going through and handling emails, because all this stuff is uncertain out here and I've got to go to this place. As good as some of the HubSpot notifications are, like, just clicking the big orange button doesn't always take you like in the exact place where, especially if your workspaces aren't set up well, like, it's still like a search party to find the information that you need. And when you could bring them in like that, where they just saw the notification, now they come into HubSpot and see the exact same information. Now immediately I've confirmed I'm in the right place. And now I'm open to seeing other forms of information. I think that is a really good idea. And hadn't heard that before. So
there are also people whose entire careers are based on like understanding communication methods and making sure that like you can structure your day and your actions to be efficient. I'm sure there's a book sitting in my to be read pile about that. So it's interesting as marketing operations people, where we, prove that we have to be a jack of all trades, because we have to think about this. We're the ones setting up the processes to make it run. We're the ones that are trying to get someone to take action and keep our data clean. So this is another area that we have to become experts in, or at least, get some familiarity with how our team works and functions, to be able to set up the systems so that we all get clean data and can work out of the same platform. And like, it always ties back to, how do you make the platform easy to use so that we all get what we need out of it?
Yeah, so that we all get what we need out of it, especially the users. Because even as I described that scenario, you see over-engineered all the time, where if the user comes in a different way, like, good luck to them. Like, and I learned some nuances even with like the task queue early this year. Like, HubSpot makes it fun sometimes. If you hit this button over here, it's going to do something. But if the task queue is up here, then something else is going to happen. And we were creating like, extra notes because we needed the information. It was just like, okay, why? And I just had to ask the question, like, why do we have 2 notes every time? And it was literally because the original process went a certain route, like through HubSpot, and they needed that place of information to be visible, right? So I think that's where, understanding the process, obviously so important, but how you construct your workspace. Because once you confirm that, yes, this is the right place, I'm seeing the right information, I have some trust now. Now I can see, oh man, this is something I would have had to go into this other system for to see it, and now it's right here. Like, and you start to build, wins like that. And that really increases adoption. And those are the kinds of things like, okay, now it does make sense for me to email from here instead of my inbox.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So I pushed this question out to some friends in my 15, 16 Slack communities I'm in now. I picked a select few channels to drop this into, and I asked what kind of communication channels exist between sales and marketing, because that's usually where I'm focusing my efforts and not getting too much into like tickets and tasks and that kind of thing. Sometimes tasks, depending on the process. But I asked, like, what are you doing? And someone I know and respect, Jack Segal, shout out, he said he's about to put things in a Google Doc. And I was like, what are you doing? He was saying that his client really just has gone through so many iterations of getting like overinformed and information overload that they just need to pull it back to basics, and they just need to start over. And there almost definitely in that case will be a V2 where it's not a Google Doc, it's an email, an internal email or digest or something like that. But it's really funny to hear that you go from my 5 examples where email alerts for contact activity, digest emails, if you could send like one a day. I don't even know how you would do that, but I'm sure we can figure it out. A bajillion Slack alerts, dashboards that you have people log into, or curated activity feeds on contact records. And then, because we've already talked about push and pull information, like you probably have at least 2 of those in the mix, or have tried 2 of them at different times. And so someone else mentioned, Chris Spellman, said that he runs a weekly sales and marketing alignment meeting, which I've heard a lot of folks do. And I think that one keeps kind of the human touch in it, because we as marketing ops people want like everything to be super clear. We want to remove as much human error as possible, but that leads to the over engineering. You just completely lose touch of things. And so when you get the sales and marketing teams or leaders to sit down next to each other, that's when you can say like, well, marketing wants to deliver you better leads. So like, how do we get this feedback loop and make sure that the data is super clear? And then everybody's on the same page, which you should be anyway. And I'm more frequently seeing people move towards like a fully loaded revenue number rather than like a split coming from marketing or sales. But, marketing still needs to prove their existence over and over again. So having that sit down and having that relationship between the teams to ensure that the information is flowing, like you should have marketing ops in that meeting because they should know, is the information getting to the right people? And if there's an effort kicking off, we've already talked in past episodes about how marketing operations is usually not part of the conversation when a campaign is getting started, even though they should be. So when you get all of those people in a room, then you really get to iterate quickly and you get that flywheel going where it's like we run something, we test it, we come back around and improve it, and then we just keep doing it over and over again, so that then your team improves over the course of like a quarter to the point where sales has lots of context and information. They have that trust for what's coming through. Marketing is delivering all of the information that they want the sales team to see and gives them enough context to act on it without overloading them. And then everybody gets the answers they want, and it's all perfect and works beautifully together. It's a pipe dream.
That's good to have dreams, I was going to say. No, but it's been super interesting for me, and especially seeing somebody like Marcus Sheridan like post about this problem when he does, like the lack of internal communication strategies and communication training. Like, I don't know where his numbers came from, but he said something like 5% of organizations actually have like documented communication training. And that resonated with me a lot because I was somebody who was brought in to, create change, lead digital transformation. Part of that's the systems, but when there's no internal communication strategy, you're asking people to do all this change, put these things in new places, like, they might be relying on water cooler conversations and stuff like that for communication. And there's just so many points that it feels like boiling the ocean when you have to wrangle, this communication. And rarely as an admin or the person bringing in HubSpot, are you in charge of that or allowed to be in charge of that, right? So it was amazing to me. But when you see these organizations who are really good at it and they have like collaboration contracts where it's like, all right, every Slack message, if you put it in there, like if you don't give me a thumbs up, I'm assuming you didn't see it. Right. And those are unfortunate, like rules like that are important when we do digital. And, the other thing I learned as I was building teams, it's easy to get to like meeting overwhelm, especially when you don't have these systems in place, because at the end of the day, we got to communicate. And if you don't have digital asynchronous ways to communicate, then we're meeting. Like we're
Right.
calling each other, we're doing something to communicate. And if you don't plan it ahead of time, that means it happens when it happens. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a balancing act to play for sure. But I think you mentioned, like you alluded to the fact that there are like the Google Doc situation, like there's
Mm-hmm.
baggage behind all of these doors
Right.
where it's like task meant this thing in this system and I hated it. And don't ever put a HubSpot task in front of
Yeah.
me or I'll kill you.
I've
Right.
encountered that a few times. Legitimately, they're like, we don't touch tasks. And I'm like, okay, we'll work around that. You got it.
Right. I'm pretty sure every Salesforce instance I've ever logged into had thousands of late tasks. And then
Yeah.
you look at what they are and it's like like fill in the deal amount. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's why the system is the way it is, because you got to task everybody to do the regular process. Right. And that's when it's like, okay, the Google Doc doesn't surprise me, where it's like, it kind of forces you to get back to the process.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what information are we actually needing? And then maybe build a process, on top of that, hopefully.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully. I mean, good news is you can automate some of that. So if you do have to dump it into a Google Doc, you can push some of that through from, the actual source of information and hopefully a link to shortcut them back into the platform. So we'll assume good intent in the Google Doc. But yeah, it's kind of funny when you start to uncover some of that baggage. There are some people where I talk about Slack alerts and they're like, no, don't touch our Slack. And then there are some people that are like, yeah, we just created a new channel to like tell us every time someone visits our website. And like it's so insane to see both sides of that. But it's giving everybody what they need or want, which is all that we can do as consultants. Like our job is to come in as the outsider and try to take inventory and improve on the process that's already there so that we can improve data quality, or so that I can improve data quality, because that's usually what I'm called in for. And so finding those pockets where you can automate to take some of those ridiculous tasks away from people and not make them get created in Salesforce. And then some of the things like, who needs to see this information? What do they need to do with it? That should be the question you like open every single conversation with. Like, what do you need to see and what do you need to do with it? And then you just build from there. So if it's a Slack alert, if it's an email, I've even done like hands-on, to give me a tour of how you use HubSpot. Like you're starting your day, I'm going to sit back and watch. And then I find so many different ways that I can improve their clicks or that I can improve their view, because they just don't know where to find it. Some of them won't open HubSpot until they get, 3 steps deep into whatever they're trying to accomplish. And so when you sit back and listen, it makes it so much easier to architect a solution that is working and will work long term. Yeah.
Like getting everybody in the room, especially the end users, to tell you how the process actually works every day is so important. Like so often it's time consuming in the beginning. It's work to understand the process and how everybody like shows up for it. But you have to do it, because otherwise you're pretending that these leaders and managers understand what it's like on the front lines, and they're making a lot of decisions about the process that are not helpful for the users. They miss they miss out on stuff that causes way more change management than required.
Right.
And you don't have the buy-in of the users at that point. So all these things pile up. And one of my favorite questions is like, does the customer ever need to see this information? right? Because often you'll find the things that are happening outside of the CRM, because if the customer needs to see it, I might just tell them on the phone, or I might, send them an email, right? And that's where I'm sending them an email because it's not in the CRM, but it certainly should be, or it is at the end of the month, or the process isn't designed to help me do that. So I have to move outside of HubSpot, right? And that's really where I think that's a good, what I was thinking about as we were, coming up with this topic today is like, especially when people are bought in to HubSpot and things are still missing or there's still challenges, it's like, okay, which part of the process exactly requires you to go out of HubSpot?
Right.
Right. And those are the emails, the messages, like all these things, even within the team. That's where like the internal things so many times I've uncovered, like, no, you don't need to send anything at all because it's right here. And just once everybody knows it's right here. Like one of my favorite updates of all time was the ability to link to specific emails, like in the feed, right? Like specific activities. Because until then, you just like would link them to the record, and then they would just like, there'd be this long thing. But and because of that, like, even though I was giving links to the record, it's like, okay, now they still got to go through all the emails and they're just not going to do it, right? But that allowed for like a training mechanism at the same time to like, nope, this information isn't here. It's like, I know if you click on this, you will see this. So much of this, if you can improve processes in this way, is just confirmation that when you do this, this thing will happen, right?
Yeah. I would love to think through, we'll just brainstorm it now, but think through a framework of how to get to your ideal communication methods. And I think as a consultant, I already come in and start talking to senior leaders. And basically my very first step is like, air your grievances with me. We have an hour and a half meeting where it's like, just list everything that makes you mad today. And then we'll figure out how to fix it, or if we should, or if it's, re-architecting half of your HubSpot instance. But when you do that, it's like, what is the complaint? And then you have a string to pull to go into the next layer. And it's like, all right, well, your CS team isn't, entering whatever information, or they're not going to HubSpot to get this information. Then you go talk to the next level down and say like, all right, show me how you click through HubSpot. Show me what you wish was here. We get to pretend like we're product managers, like go in and say, click on the thing, tell me what you want to do, tell me why that might be frustrating or not work the way that you would want it to. I've heard that this process is not working the way that people want it to. So let's uncover why, and let's work together. And so then you understand the strategy and you understand the user. Now the next step is kind of take inventory of everything. Like you get a lot of that from talking to the user, but it's like, are you clicking into HubSpot from an email? Are you getting it from an alert? Where are the alerts sending? Who's paying attention to them? If that, feed of every time someone visits your website, it's just sitting there and no one opens it, let's get rid of that, because it's actually working against you to prove that that's not a reliable channel when you want it to be. So you can take inventory of those things that maybe people aren't using, and then move towards like, okay, I watched this user click here, click here, click here, and they got there because it was an email notification. So as long as we keep our email notifications in check and we like improve their view so that that property that the like VP isn't getting what they want out of is front and center, or has some process around it that makes more sense to the end user, now we've just solved hopefully the whole process. And so you can get to that point where it's like, this type of alert will come from this channel. This type of alert should go to the same channel, but pull you into this place. Because you also don't want to go into too many places. But like we said, each person kind of has their own routine for like waking up and opening their laptop at the beginning of their workday. So you've got to do some combination of meeting people where they're at and standardizing communication practices to sort of the push and pull pieces.
It is as simple as that. If you get people, together and on the same page, right? Understanding where you are now and where everybody wants to go. Yeah, we don't need to overthink it, people. So this was a great conversation today. I like this topic a
Yeah.
lot. I think it's not talked about nearly enough as far as communication management within teams. And turns out HubSpot can help a lot with that. And that's why
If
we
you
wanted
let
to
it,
talk about it today. It's just if you let it,
let
if you
HubSpot
let
into your
it.
life.
Indeed. So on that note, think about your processes. Think about that communication, that notification icon that you just watch go up every day. Maybe think about why, what people might be wanting to happen with those notifications. Think about your process, find those opportunities, and let's grow. Have a great day, everybody.